I extend a particular warm welcome to representatives of the diplomatic mission in Dublin who are with us here today. I want to thank all of you for your response to this meeting and your support for our decision to postpone the Ardèche. It was a difficult decision to make because our Ardèche is important to all of us, particularly our membership. Sinn Féin is the only All-Ireland party, and the Ardèche is the main opportunity for us to meet in an all-Ireland basis to share views and analysis of the issues we all work on. We face huge challenges at this time, so we understand the disappointment of our membership in that we had to postpone the Ardèche, but it was the correct decision. Foot and mouth disease is a huge threat to our economy, particularly to the agricultural sector, and has obvious wider consequences for the country as a whole. We will reconvene the Ardèche as soon as possible. The past year has been one of hard work, but also one of frustration for Republicans. Since we last met, Sinn Féin has worked tirelessly to make the peace process work, only to be hampered at almost every turn by unionists and the British government. This week saw the end of 9 weeks of intensive political negotiations. They ended with no real movement and no closing of the gap on the main issues: policing, demilitarisation, and the permanency of institutions, issues which can only be resolved by the British government. The only player who made a move for the good of the process was the IRA. The IRA unilaterally decided, in a genuine bid to create political space, to re-engage with General de Chastelin and his IICD. This was not part of a sequence or a deal, but people should read the IRA's statement very closely, and in particular the British government should read it and read it again. The British government knows what needs to be done. They know what they signed up to in May of last year, and more importantly, they know, and admitted this week, that they have not delivered upon this yet. Why have the British not delivered? Is it a lack of political will, an act of bad faith, or is it simply the continuation of a failed British government policy driven by securocrats rather than Democrats? Only Tony Blair can answer. Only Tony Blair can deliver on the commitments made last year. However, British Secretary of State John Reid indicated yesterday in a series of media interviews that the British were not prepared to move on the critical issues of policing and demilitarisation until there was movement on the issue of IRA arms. Mr. Reid must realise that the current crisis in the peace process is not caused by any failure on behalf of Republicans. It is caused by the British government failing to honour the public commitments it made last May. John Reid's remarks are further evidence of a British government once again breaking public commitments it has entered into. It is evidence of a British government once again using the decommissioning issue to block progress. This cannot be allowed to continue. Sinn Féin is the fastest growing political party in this island. We have made tremendous gains not just at the ballot box, but in winning new members and supporters to our cause. Unlike other parties which are experiencing difficulties in getting young people to join their parties, Sinn Féin has no such difficulty. Ógra Sinn Féin is the fastest growing, most dynamic and most energetic youth wing of any party in the country. In the new college year, we have seen 1,000 young people join Sinn Féin in universities and colleges the length and breadth of the country. We are gaining not just in numerical strength, but also in political influence. None of this has happened by chance. We planned for it. We developed a peace strategy which can take us beyond partition to the reunification of our country. And we have worked hard to advance our strategic goals. We want a chance to implement our policies on social reform and economic democracy, as well as women's rights, cultural development, children's rights, environmental protection, civil liberties, sovereignty and unity. But none of this will happen unless we increase our political strength. All of this has been at a time of unprecedented work for all members of the party, from our negotiating team to our elected representatives and to our party activists and supporters throughout the country. This includes those who have been with us for 30 years and longer, and those who are joining us in ever-increasing numbers. This growth reflects the confidence of nationalists and Republican Ireland. It reflects not just the work of the leadership, but all of the members and supporters who have gone out and worked to deliver the Sinn Féin message. Perhaps we don't say it often, and we certainly don't say it often enough. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank each and every member of Sinn Féin for all your hard work. Our capacity to grow further and to provide a real political alternative to the sterile politics of the established parties is absolutely enormous. The months ahead will present Republicans with major challenges as we face into elections north and south. We have already come through a succession of phases of our struggle, from which we have emerged ever stronger. It is now up to all of us to ensure that the struggle moves forward until we achieve our ultimate objective. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the 1981 hunger strike, when young men gave so much for this struggle that the memory of their suffering and sacrifice is today still painful and yet hard to grasp because of the sheer scale of it. In Long Kesh and Armagh jails in the years between 1976 and 1981, a battle was fought and won by Republican POWs, men and women alike, who endured isolation, beatings, and atrocious conditions and ultimately starvation to assert the integrity of their struggle. 20 years ago this year, the hunger strikers succeeded in smashing criminalisation and exposing the reality of British rule in Ireland to a horrified world. Today, we can succeed in delivering the Republican objectives for which they gave their lives. A free and united Ireland with justice and equality for all our people and a peaceful future for our children. That task lies ahead for all of us. The struggle continues. It is a struggle we can win. It is a struggle we will win. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Caoimhín O'Quillan TD, Caoimhín O'Quillan Sinn Féin TD for Cavan Monaghan.
Gormahiv, agus fáilte Roiv Illigan Shaharmajin. I am proud, deeply proud, to represent Sinn Féin and the peoples of Cavan and Monaghan in Leinster House. For the past 3.5 years, I have been the sole Sinn Féin TD, but I have not been a lone voice. I know that behind me is a party which is growing in strength and in confidence throughout the length and breadth of this island. And make no mistake, my fellow TDs of other parties know this too. They are looking over their shoulders at Sinn Féin. In the Dáil, I have articulated the progressive principles and policies of Sinn Féin as decided by delegates at successive Ard Fheis and as promoted by activists through their hard work on the ground. In the Sinn Féin TD's third annual constituency report, which a number of you will have received a copy here this morning, you will see much, but by no means all, of the work of your TD at local, regional and national level. When I took my seat in Leinster House in 1997, I noted in my first speech the failure of successive administrations in this state to fulfil the aim of the democratic programme of the first Dáil Éireann, which declared the right of every citizen to an adequate share of the produce of the nation's labour. 3.5 years later, it is clear that the current Fianna Fáil Progressive Democrats government has continued that record of failure. In one respect, their failure is far worse than their predecessors, because no previous government in this state had such resources at its disposal. Yet, instead of sharing the wealth, this government has rewarded most those who need help least and left those in greatest need waiting in line. And where do our people wait? They languish on local authority housing waiting lists, or they struggle with huge mortgages as this government presides over what is, in fact, a housing crisis. We have over 50,000 people on local authority waiting lists, yet the local authorities or the voluntary sector are building only 8% of all houses currently under construction in this state. This is the lowest share for any period in the last century. The prices of homes are spiralling beyond the reach of most families, and still this government tells us there is no housing crisis. Our people also have to wait months and years for hospital treatment. In no area has mismanagement by this and previous governments caused so much real pain as in the health services. Never was the two-tier nature of those services more glaringly exposed. Private medicine is a hugely profitable business, while patients and staff in the public system struggle with understaffing, long hours, and bad organisation. In command of the health services, there is an elite of highly paid consultants who can make massive gain from private medicine, while at the same time being paid from the public purse to work in the public sector. They dominate the health service bureaucracy, and they are indulged and coddled by this government. Only root and branch reform of the health services can end this gross inequality. No longer must we have the shameful spectacle of wealth buying instant access to vital care while others in need deteriorate on waiting lists. Access must be based on need, not on ability to pay, and healthcare must be free to all who need it. And I would just like to take this opportunity here this morning to call on Minister Micheál Martin as a first step in restoring some semblance of intent and an understanding in the greater body of people that this government might seriously take its responsibilities in health delivery seriously, as a first step that he would direct the reopening and the development of the maternity services at Monaghan and Dundalk hospitals that were so shamefully closed in recent weeks. In 4 successive pre-budget submissions on behalf of this party, I have called for the massive surpluses in government coffers to be spent not on tax cuts for big business and the wealthy, but on services for people who have needs in terms of health, childcare and in education. Instead, what has this government done? Good Time Charlie, Minister McCreevy, has cut tax for the highest earners and urged them to crack open the champagne and celebrate. This is creating a Sinn Féin society where greed is great and need must wait for crumbs from their table. We in Sinn Féin reject totally that approach. We are, as Pat Doherty has said, marking the 20th anniversary of the 1981 hunger strikes this year. And in his hunger strike prison diary, Bobby Sands wrote about the corruption of the Irish political establishment. And I think it's fitting to quote today from Bobby's writings. He said, "There are still too many who walk among the people, bubbling with false enthusiasm, false patriotism, and false concern. Political magpies and political opportunists and parasites. Total equality and fraternity can't and never will be gained while these parasites dominate and rule the lives of a nation. There is no equality in a society that stands upon the economic and political bog of only the strongest make it good or survive. Compare the lives, comforts, habits and wealth of all those political conmen who allegedly are concerned for us, the people, with that of the wretchedly deprived and oppressed." 20 years ago, Bobby read it right, and it hasn't changed. But at least it has become more exposed. Bobby's words are clearly even more relevant today, as the succession of revelations from Dublin Castle show us how far from the idealism and self-sacrifice of the hunger strikers were so many of the men and women who administered this state over these past 2 decades and before. I believe there is now a hunger for real change in the political life of Ireland. Who will provide it? That is the question. It won't be Fine Gael, as their new leader, Michael Noonan, competes with Fianna Fáil to see who has the least number of brown envelopes and unreturned cheques in our party coffers. And I assure you, it won't be Rory Quinn or the Labour Party, for Rory seems more preoccupied every day with the growth of Sinn Féin, especially here in the city of Dublin. The reality is that Sinn Féin is at the cutting edge of political change in Ireland today. We are the only political organisation which is growing significantly in this country. We are the only, and let us repeat, we are the only All-Ireland party. But we remain a relatively small party, and many challenges lie ahead. And the next challenge, very likely for us on this side of the border, will be a general election. For 3.5 years, I have been the sole Sinn Féin TD. But I think my stretch in solitary is coming to an end. And if we could reverse the experience of so many of our comrades, what I'm looking forward to is a break-in. After the next general election, I look forward to a Sinn Féin team, including Sean Crowe, TD, Martin Ferris, TD, Arthur Morgan, TD, Sean McManus, TD. I better not stop, I'm in Dublin. Nicky Keogh and Desi Ellis, TD. The presence of a strong Republican team is badly needed in Leinster House, not least to confront the poor leadership shown by the present government and the so-called opposition parties with regard, most especially, to the peace process. There has been a lack of willingness on the part of this government and this Taoiseach, as I have seen it in Leinster House. A lack of willingness to challenge the British government and unionism on their violation of the Good Friday Agreement. Too often also, the Fine Gael and Labour parties, rather than focus on the real difficulties of the process, have indulged in narrow party political attacks on Sinn Féin. The best response to that, and the best way to ensure that the electorate of the 26 counties are given effective leadership on the peace process, is to elect a Sinn Féin team of TDs. That is the only answer. Sinn Féin is ready for the next general election, which may be called at any time. I am confident that we will build on our hard work and electoral successes of recent years, and I urge you all to ensure that our results mark yet another very significant step on the long road to freedom, to justice and to peace. Araigling le Céile.
Although we had to postpone the Ardèche, we still wanted to give the Dublin City delegates some opportunity to give us their analysis of the current situation, particularly in relation to the peace process and the building of political strength. So we've set aside some time for that. Because of the structure of the hall, we can only take queues of 3 at a time. There's 3 seats reserved down there for the delegates, and we will be limiting their contribution to 3 minutes. Mary Lou MacDonald over here will be, and Mary Lou is one of our up-and-coming stars, I might say, in terms of electoral politics and the developing peace process. She will be helping me to keep you to that 3 minutes and not allowing you in typical Republican style to overrun your time. So we'll start into that. There's 3 seats left there beside Jerry Adams, and you have the privilege without paying to sit beside him, and 3 at a time.
Corda, agus comréide, is mis dahi dúlan cahiarlach Sinn Féin Ard Fheis. My name is Dublin. I'm the chair of Dublin Sinn Féin and the representative for this constituency. So I'd like to welcome the opportunity to welcome you all to my constituency. The members, the supporters, our international delegates, the solidarity groups. I think it's very apt that indeed this is to Rory Quinn's constituency. I'm glad Queeveen referred to it, because we're here to stay, we're getting bigger, we're getting stronger, and your days as TD are numbered in this constituency. And this is, I think, a very, very exciting time for us as Irish Republicans. It's a very exciting time for members of Sinn Féin. And this is also a very important year for all Irish Republicans as it marks the 20th anniversary of the hunger strikes. A very intense, a very emotional period of time in our struggle. And many people here today were part of that struggle, be it in the jails or on the streets. I think it's very appropriate that we show and honour and commemorate through this year the women of Armagh Jail and the men of the H Block and the men who made the ultimate sacrifice during this period 20 years ago, who gave their lives so as our struggle would not be criminalised. It was never a criminal struggle, it never is and it never will be. And those men and women prove that. And this year gives us the opportunity to commemorate and celebrate the lives of those men and women. And it gives us the opportunity to lay the foundation for the future. And the future is about having a vision for the future. And we are visionaries. We have a vision of a united, a democratic and a socialist 32 county republic. That republic will be based on the premise of cherishing all the children of the nation equally. That means cherishing all the children, regardless of race, regardless of culture, regardless of gender, and regardless of sexuality. Sinn Féin is the voice of that vision. And it is our job to strengthen that voice and to ensure that voice is heard throughout this city. And all this happens against the backdrop of the peace process. That is most definitely not delivering for us Republicans or us nationalists. The only guarantee in this process has been the IRA initiative to re-engage with the Independent International Commission on Decommissioning. And that has given us all the room to manoeuvre and to make politics work. And it was a very brave decision by those who have been at the front line for over 30 years to re-engage with the Commission. We have trusted these comrades in the past. We must continue to trust them with the more recent decisions they have made. It is now up to each and every one of us here today to make the necessary political gains so that any further negotiations will have a larger and strengthened Sinn Féin team. Because folks, our basic problem is that we're still nowhere near the largest party in this island. And that has borne out continuously in these negotiations. And this means simply that we are unable to dictate where the current negotiations are going. We will not achieve Irish unity if we are to remain at our current strength. We need to build this party of ours and make it strong enough to ensure that we are in a position to influence politics throughout this island. There is a British border, an imposed British border 90 miles up the road from here. And the struggle doesn't start or finish at that border. That struggle starts here in this room today. It starts in your hearts and minds. And it is up to us, when we leave here today, to bring that struggle back into our communities, back into our common, back into our colleges, and back into our workplaces. And Sinn Féin, being a national party, being the only national party, faces 3 elections within the next 12 months. We face a Westminster general election, we face a 6 county local election, we also face an election here in the 26 counties. And nowhere more will our electoral advance be seen or studied than in this city of ours, than in Dublin. We are at a historical stage of our struggle, folks. We have the capacity to elect several TDs in this city. And that will change the destiny of our struggle forever. It will have an immense political impact on these islands, and let's be clear about that. We have a huge task in front of us. We rose to the challenge in this city in 1999 by electing 6 councillors across the city, 4 in Dublin City Council and 2 in South Dublin County Council. With the forthcoming election, we can make history and elect a Dublin team of TDs, joining Queeveen O'Quailon and joining TDs right across the 26 counties. A formidable team that will shake up the corridors of stale, stagnant political power. We will have the opportunity to blow the cobwebs out of the windows in Leinster House. Our priority, folks, is the welfare of the people of this state. We will be the voice of those who feel excluded by this newfound wealth of the Celtic Tiger. Our priority in this city is a proper, adequate, accessible transport system, housing, the ongoing fight against drugs, and the fight against racism. I deal with the housing issue as a particularly pertinent issue for me, being in this constituency. And I would like to publicly declare, we are facing a crisis in this city, a housing crisis of unprecedented proportions. And I would publicly call on Bobby Malloy to engage in a coherent, comprehensive building programme for this city, in consultation with our councillors and with the communities. We should not let the housing crisis be given over to private development, because they are not interested in housing our people. They are interested in bank balances, checkbooks and profits. The health system, which has failed people not only in this city but right across the state miserably. We have the old and the frail left in corridors of hospitals, while private consultants make unprecedented wealth. While this state has unprecedented wealth in its coffers. Oh, very important. And in conclusion, I would like to thank our supporters across the city and our party members. Particularly, I'd like to thank the people who came here from my own constituency in Pearse Street, in York Street, from Ringsend, and from Charlemont Street. And when we leave here today, let us lay the foundation of the new Ireland we so much want, and let us build on that foundation. Let us build that Ireland we deserve, and that the people of this country deserve. And that struggle starts here today, when we leave here today, and keep giving out the leaflets, and keep the canvassing, and the postering, and the picketing, and the protesting, because it all counts. Go to Míle Maith Agaibh.
I'm just looking at this dude here on the wall with the frock coat on him. I'm just picturing when Jack gets elected to Dáil Éireann, I think we should pull together and buy him one of them outfits. Yeah, thanks very much. Just a couple of things. I won't be going on as long as Dahi, and I think Dahi said most of the things that I would have wanted to say anyway, so we won't take up too much time. The first thing I want to talk about, I know later on we're going to honour in some fashion and deal in some way with the hunger strike. I think first of all I'd like you to join with me today in commending the people who at this present time, both throughout the country and particularly in Dublin, the 81 committees who are doing such great work. I think they deserve a big bowl of applause. One of the things that strikes me about it is the amount of young people who are involved in this on the 81 committees. People who were very young and some maybe not even born at that time. And that kind of brings it home to you, the importance of this and the extent of it. That here are these young people who certainly at the time of the hunger strikes wouldn't have known anything about it and been so impressed by that epoch in our history that they are now actually organising great events through it. We just last week had 2 powerful events in this city commemorating the hunger strikers. And I think that leads us also to the fact of the young people who have come to work in Sinn Féin, the young people in our common, the young people in our colleges and universities. And for someone like me who is not too young, that gives us great heart to see the young people coming forward and working with us. And it shows us that we're on the right track and that we're really the alternative. And earlier speakers spoke about the expansion in the 26 counties and the expansion of Sinn Féin in Dublin and the rise of Sinn Féin throughout this country. And a lot of that is down to not just the hard work of people who have been around for many years, but also this great energy we get from young people coming in and working with us. And long may it last. And I'd love to see more and more people coming in, and it gives me, as I say, great pride and pleasure to see young people coming into our common and into our structures. Go to Míle Maith Agaibh. no doubt about it, but we're a real alternative. And we do have them scared. They're running scared throughout this island. And particularly, I suppose, where I can see it most, and my colleagues in Dublin, we can see it, where the parties, the Labour Party, but all other parties are running scared of Sinn Féin. They know we're the alternative, and they know we're serious about our politics, and they know we're serious about dealing with people. And what happens now is the people are trusting us, and the people are respecting us, and the people are making us welcome, because they know that we're the only ones who are going to make any attempt to change their lives in any meaningful way in this city and in this country. Sometimes, you know, in Dublin, I suppose, and in the 26 counties, maybe in general, sometimes we might find it difficult or hard to imagine how our expansion in this part of the country really makes any impact on the peace process. Well, I think it's very simple. As we have seen throughout the years of Sinn Féin growing electorally stronger in the 6 counties, the way now we can't be sidelined. We can't be left behind ever again. There's no doubt about it that the SDLP would have went off and done all kinds of deals only for one thing, the electoral strength of Sinn Féin. And that leads us to building up our electorate. It's so important to build up the electoral strength in the 26 counties, because also, not just on the national issue, but on social issues, we can't be left behind, we can't be ignored, and that's the way we must go. We must build up that strength so we can't be ignored and the people we represent can't be ignored. All right, with 30 seconds. Dahi again mentioned some of the major issues that most people, all the other political organisations in this city and country won't deal with. The issues of drugs. Our city is rampant with drugs, and the city of the Celtic Tiger. There's that city up there that's buzzing. That city up there that's wealthy, that's affluent. But there's the other city down there in the gutter, where people are sleeping on the streets, people are strung out on heroin. Not one iota is ever really seriously addressed, and we're the only people that's going to address that. Homelessness, the health service in crisis, a housing crisis, a city also with the ugly head of racism raising itself everywhere. And we must stand up and be counted on that issue also. Everywhere we see racism raising its ugly head, in our workplace, in our playplace, if we go for a drink or wherever, we must defend the right of all people to live wherever they want to. I'll just finish now, Pat, by saying, particularly, and it's great to see all the comrades from Dublin here today, this morning, today, this afternoon, whenever. It's great. It's great to see you all here. But how do we move this on? Not just by the leadership, not by the elected representatives. How we move on in this strength is you and me, and we do it all together. Gonna mail them all, go come.
I'm Jacob Carter, Coughlin Murphy from Trinity Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin, we've actually identified 4 main obstacles towards the peace process that's holding up the negotiation process. First of all is the policing bill, and how the British government have brought in a very watered down version of the policing bill. It's not a sort of a meaningful way to address this issue at all. And the fact that Ronnie Flanagan still heads this force only adds insult to injury. The other second point is the ongoing loyalist campaign against nationalists, and the fact that there's evidence of Crown Forces collusion in this. And it also seems it's part of a securocratic agenda to provoke the IRA back into a military mode. The other third point is the Castlereagh 5. The fact that the 26 county government has not implemented its obligations and commitments under the Good Friday Agreement. And that also has to be highlighted and brought home to the 26 county government here. And the final point is the fact that this negotiation process is held up is the responsibility of the British government, and particularly Tony Blair. They have the power to implement a meaningful bring about meaningful policing bill. They also have the power to implement demilitarisation and bring many other measures to fruition. The fact they're not doing this means that they are clearly responsible. So come in, Margaret Carter.